One of the problems that are faced by carers is that when they're caring for someone who is actually medically vulnerable to COVID. As we all know, there are people with underlying health conditions that makes them much more vulnerable and in some cases in danger if they contract the virus. Obviously, a lot of our carers are very concerned about spreading the virus to their loved ones and go to great lengths to try and avoid doing so and follow the guidance that's been shared with them by the government and SAGE, etc. So the next question, we're going to look at how that may impact. First of all, we'll look at young people, and then we'll look at adult carers. So with the first question that I want to put is to you, Tim. When a young carer is trying to juggle schooling and may in the back of their mind be deeply anxious that they may spread the virus to a member of their household who is very vulnerable to COVID, what would you say to them, and what could they do?
Well, first of all, I'd say I really do appreciate those concerns because they're very real, and it's a really difficult position to be in. Denise will come in from a medical perspective, but what the government guidance is saying is that children and young people who are caring for someone who's clinically vulnerable are still able to go to school at the moment, unless they have been instructed otherwise. So I'd encourage them to keep going, have a discussion with the school, with any medical professionals involved with their care. And if there is a problem with going to school, then talk to the school about remote learning opportunities, because what we can't have is young carers missing out on vital education.
I think when we talked about this in the past, the key thing is to have that proper medical input, isn't it? If a consultant or a doctor, if it's say that the young carer is caring for a parent or a peer in the household, that it's not just their responsibility. They can contact the school, they can contact Carers Trust ourselves, but they get a doctor's input to explain what the level of risk is, and therefore to help them and inform them. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. But by and large, the guidance is that those who are living with children, living with others who are clinically extremely vulnerable, are able to go about their usual business. But there will be some exceptions to that, I'm sure. But again, it's talking to those medical practitioners involved with the care of the person they're worried about.
I think sometimes carers may become a little bit confused when at one point everybody was shielding in the country, at other point people were asked to stay at home. Other times I've self-isolated because of my elderly mother-in-law on more than one occasion. And normally with a respiratory illness, you don't go around someone who's vulnerable or elderly. If you've got a cold, you keep a little bit of distance. You're sensible about that. Well, this is probably much more serious than that. So it's about trying to understand the changing guidance that's come out. Okay, did you want to add anything else, Tim?
No, I mean, I think that probably covers the main points. I know Denise will have some advice as well.
Yeah, Denise, what would you like to add? And particularly as we start to think about some of the older carers in their 60s and 70s caring for people in their 80s and 90s.
I mean, it's a really difficult one, and I think the advice has changed between the prior lockdown and this one, in the fact that there are a lot less people now that are deemed to need to shield, and I think that is reflective of what we now know more about the COVID-19 infection than we did prior. Having said that, I think it's something sensible at the moment with the lockdown anyway, is that nobody can travel unless it's essential, unless they're going to school or to work anyway, and there's only certain reasons people can go out of their homes, and we're really hoping that is going to have an impact on the second wave local rates of COVID infections. But when somebody is clinically vulnerable in the home, it comes back to exactly what you've already said. It's seeking that health consultant advice, and Tim is absolutely right. For the majority of children that are living with clinically extremely vulnerable adults, they'll be fine to go to school. Hugely important that they're there, and it's the best place for them to be for their well-being and for their progression. But in a small number of cases, it will be a situation, and we have heard of these, where a health consultant will say, no, it's really important that the household does actually shield with the clinically extremely vulnerable person. But they do tend to be the exception rather than the rule. So it is a case of absolutely seeking out that specialist medical knowledge. It's slightly different different for clinically extremely vulnerable children if they do come into that category. And again, that has shifted quite significantly since the prior lockdown into be a narrower, a smaller number of those children and young people. They do need to be at home and shouldn't be in school. And schools have been great in being really supportive of making sure they've got a remote learning offer to ensure that they can keep up with their studies, as we know how hugely important that is for them.
Thank you.